Donald Trump's grandiose rhetoric, from demanding that Greenland surrender itself to issuing threats of invasion and pushing the absurd idea that the United States should spend nearly $1 trillion to purchase the territory, has now reached an entirely new level. And that level was officially triggered when NATO announced the deployment of troops to Greenland. That is the reality on the ground right now, because the President of the United States appears willing to provoke a conflict with Europe. This is no longer about social media threats or tantrums in the Oval Office. This is a real military shift unfolding in front of our eyes. NATO, the most powerful military alliance in history, of which the United States is a central member, is now deploying forces to protect one of its own members from the United States itself. Let that sink in. Denmark, along with Germany, France, Sweden, and Norway, has deployed a limited number of troops as part of Operation Arctic Endurance, a joint military exercise running from today through Saturday. Officially, it is a training exercise, but the real message is a blunt warning sent directly to Washington: do not cross this line. We are now facing the risk of shattering the post-World War II global order, a system in which Western allies defend one another rather than point weapons at each other. Donald Trump has pushed us into a scenario that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. He is willing to sacrifice 70 years of diplomatic relationships, willing to turn America's closest allies into adversaries, simply to satisfy his personal ego and his obsession with owning land. You need to understand how dangerous this situation truly is. Denmark is responsible for Greenland's defense, and it is made clear that it will not back down. The Prime Minister of Greenland has been forced to issue a public statement saying that if they must choose between the United States and Denmark right now, they choose Denmark, they choose NATO, and they choose the European Union. This is an unprecedented diplomatic humiliation for the United States. Instead of drawing allies closer, we are pushing them into a defensive posture. And how does Donald Trump respond? With crude bully-style threats. When asked about the Greenland Prime Minister's statement, Trump said, "That's their problem, and it will be a big problem for them." This is not the language of a diplomat or a statesman. This is the language of a mob boss shaking down a small business that refuses to pay protection money. But Greenland is not a small business, and Denmark is not standing alone. Behind them stands an angry and alarmed NATO alliance. What we are witnessing is the beginning of a crisis that could lead to the complete collapse of NATO, something Vladimir Putin has dreamed of for decades, and something Donald Trump now appears to be delivering for free. But this madness does not stop with military maneuvers. It runs much deeper, seeping into the White House's propaganda apparatus itself, sending out alarming and extreme ideological signals. Chris Hayes delivered an excellent report last night explaining how we arrived at this point, but there is one specific detail you need to pay attention to, because it exposes the true ideology behind this attempted seizure. The White House posted what appears to be an AI-generated meme with the caption, "Which way, Greenland man?" At first glance, it might seem like a harmless joke or a clumsy attempt to grab attention on social media, but if you understand the history, it is anything but harmless. This is a not-so-subtle reference to a notorious far-right book titled "Which Way, Western Man?", a work rooted in white supremacist ideology that glorifies Hitler and promotes some of the most toxic racist theories ever put into print. The use of this imagery and language by official or affiliated White House accounts is not accidental. In the world of political signaling, dog whistles, this is not a whistle at all. It is a blaring siren. They are signaling to their most extreme supporters that taking Greenland is not just about resources or military strategy, but about the expansion of a Western white empire under their distorted worldview. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum even posted a graphic depicting Greenland as part of the United States. They may think this is a joke, or perhaps they do not. I honestly do not know. But the way they talk about a critical strategic ally and about 60,000 real human beings living in the 21st century, people with the right to self-determination, is utterly grotesque. They are treating Greenland as empty real estate, a vacant property waiting to be civilized by Donald Trump. This mindset reflects a form of imperial arrogance that should have been buried in the 19th century, when great powers redrew maps without regard for the will of local populations. But this is 2026, and the people of Greenland are not pawns on Trump's chessboard. The combination of irrational territorial ambition and far-right ideological signaling creates a toxic mix that threatens not only diplomatic relationships, but the core values of American democracy itself. We are allowing people driven by conspiracy theories and hateful ideologies to shape the nation's foreign policy, and the result is that the United States is more isolated on the global stage than ever before. Now let's talk about money, because in the end, everything comes down to your money. Donald Trump wants you to believe that buying Greenland or invading it would be an economic masterstroke. The reality is that it would bleed you dry down to the very last dollar. Estimates suggest that the United States could be on the hook for payments approaching $1 trillion if this deal, or this invasion, were carried out the way he wants. He is proposing a 50% increase in the military budget, adding roughly $500 billion more to a budget that is already massive and hasn't passed a full audit in over a decade. Elon Musk and the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, promise spending cuts and waste reduction, but in reality, they are preparing to incinerate your money on a pointless military adventure. Meanwhile, here at home, life has never been more expensive. Your generation and mine are facing a brutal reality. Not only is it harder than ever to find a decent job, but we may never be able to afford a home. Food prices are up, rent is up, healthcare costs are up. And how does the government respond? By proposing to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to buy a frozen island. The contrast is staggering. In the richest country on earth, people are declaring bankruptcy because they can't afford medical bills. Seniors are rationing their medication because drug prices are too high. Children are going to bed hungry. And yet Donald Trump is willing to write blank checks for wars and fantasy real estate deals. Look at Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu recently said in an interview that he believes Israel should move toward a future without U.S. aid. That is a blatant lie. But even as he says it, Trump jumps in and promises that America will always send money, that we will even invade if necessary to guarantee their security. We are shipping your tax dollars overseas to fund conflicts and territorial ambitions, while infrastructure at home is crumbling. This is a blatant transfer of wealth from working Americans to defense contractors and special interests. You have every right to be angry. You should be angry. Anger is the only reasonable response when you watch your hard-earned money burned in the Arctic, instead of being used to fix the pothole-filled roads outside your home or to improve the education system for your children. Why is Donald Trump so obsessed with Greenland? The answer may be dumber than you think, but it fits his psychological profile perfectly. A large part of it is simply because Greenland looks very big on a map. Trump has effectively admitted this in interviews. He likes Greenland because it is big. But as anyone with basic geographic knowledge understands, Greenland's massive size on most wall maps is an optical illusion created by the Mercator projection. That projection dramatically enlarges land masses near the North and South poles when it tries to flatten a spherical planet onto a two-dimensional surface. Greenland is indeed large, don't get me wrong, but it is nowhere near the size of entire continents like Africa or South America, despite how it appears on Trump's maps. It is deeply disturbing to say this, but U.S. foreign policy is now being influenced by the president's inability to understand how maps work. He looks at a map, sees a huge block of land, and thinks, I want that. I want my name on it. That brings us to the psychological aspect of ownership. When asked why he needs to own territory rather than simply maintain alliances, Trump said that ownership gives you things that treaties or lease agreements cannot. He views the world through the lens of a deeply flawed real estate tycoon. To Trump, there is no concept of cooperation, mutual respect, or equal alliances, only owners and renters, rulers and the ruled. Psychologically, he feels the need to own Greenland in order to feel successful. This is a legacy project. He knows his time is limited. He knows his body and his mind are deteriorating, and he wants to leave behind a permanent mark, a piece of territory bearing the Trump name. That is why a military alliance is not enough for him, because you cannot put your name on a treaty the way you can put it on a building or an island. This childish obsession with size and ownership is pushing the entire world toward danger. We are allowing the personal psychological insecurities of an aging man to shape national borders and provoke military conflicts. That is the very definition of absurdity. To strip away the lies about so-called national security needs, we have to look at the actual military reality on the ground. Trump's supporters and his propaganda apparatus are trying to convince you that the United States must seize Greenland to stop Russia or China, that this is somehow a matter of survival for American security. But that is a lie. The truth is we already have everything we need in Greenland. We have Thule Air Base, the northernmost U.S. military base, which has been operating there for more than 70 years. Greenland has long been an active part of the U.S. and NATO missile defense system. I'll admit that I didn't fully understand the details of this before, but you know how I know for sure now? Because Vice President J.D. Vance visited that base last year. I can guarantee you that he knows it exists. He knows we have access. He knows we have radar systems, runways, and U.S. troops stationed there. Invading or outright purchasing Greenland would provide no additional real strategic benefit that we do not already possess under existing treaties and agreements. So why are they pushing this? If it isn't about security, then what is it about? It's about manufacturing a crisis in order to consolidate power. It's about militarizing foreign policy to distract from domestic failures. And most importantly, it's about resources. We'll get to resources later. But from a purely military standpoint, attacking a NATO ally would be an act of strategic suicide. Article 5 of the NATO Charter states that an attack on one member is an attack on all. If the United States were to attack Greenland, which is part of Denmark, we would, in theory, be triggering a war with the very alliance we are supposed to lead. The United Kingdom, France, Germany, Canada, what are they supposed to do? Trump is putting them in an impossible position. He is destroying U.S. credibility faster than any external enemy ever could. There is no national security justification for this. There are only Trump's selfish motivations and the darker calculations of those operating behind him. What we are witnessing is a blatant violation of international treaties ratified by the United States Senate, and it is transforming America from a nation that upholds the rule of law into a rogue state on the world stage. If you strip away the facade of national security and American pride, you arrive at the real motive behind the obsession with Greenland: money and resources. Greenland is not just ice and snow. Beneath that ice lies a massive treasure trove of rare earth minerals, uranium, oil, and natural gas. In a technology-hungry world, whoever controls rare earths controls the future. And this is where the oligarchs enter the picture. Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, Elon Musk, the richest men on the planet, are not standing on the sidelines. They see a once-in-a-century opportunity to privatize the resources of an entire territory under the protection of the U.S. military. The plan is simple. Use your tax dollars to buy or seize Greenland, use your military to secure it, and then hand over extraction rights to friendly private corporations. Elon Musk, who now controls an estimated $770 billion in wealth and exerts direct influence over Trump's policy through Doge, would be among the biggest beneficiaries. His companies need rare earths for electric vehicle batteries, rockets, and semiconductors. Instead of buying them on the international market, why not have the U.S. government seize the supply and deliver it to him at bargain prices? This is the essence of gangster capitalism. The risks and costs are socialized. You pay the money, your children fight the wars, while the profits are privatized. They become the world's first trillionaires. Donald Trump, with his transactional mindset, serves as the ultimate broker. He is selling American sovereignty and military power to the highest bidders. It is no coincidence that Trump wants to massively expand the military budget while cutting social programs. He doesn't need a stronger military to protect you from terrorists. He needs it to protect the future mining operations of his donors. This is global-scale looting wrapped in the language of patriotism. And while they are dividing up the Greenland pie, you are struggling to fill your gas tank or buy groceries. This imbalance is not a bug in the system. It is the defining feature of the system they are building. This madness is creating real fractures inside the Republican Party itself, and we need to pay close attention to that. Senator Ruben Gallego has named this problem precisely, warning that we are approaching terrifying levels where the European Union and other democratic nations around the world may decide that the United States is no longer a safe place to invest in or to trust. That would be an economic catastrophe. But what's especially revealing is the Republican response. They are scared. Don Bacon and a handful of other Republicans have begun to speak out, timidly but noticeably. Why? Not because they've suddenly grown a conscience, but because they know this will destroy them in the midterm elections. American voters are furious about inflation and the cost of living, and the image of a president trying to buy an island for hundreds of billions of dollars while abandoning working people is an unrecoverable public relations disaster. They know the American public isn't stupid forever. People are realizing that Greenland will not lower gas prices, will not reduce rent, and certainly will not make it easier for their children to afford college. On the contrary, it will make everything worse. Donald Trump knows his political position is weakening. He told Reuters that he does not want the midterm elections to take place. Think about that. A sitting U.S. president openly talking about canceling or delaying elections because he is afraid of losing. An invasion of Greenland could be his desperate attempt to manufacture a national emergency, a pretext for martial law, or the suspension of democratic processes. He is trying to use a foreign conflict to consolidate power at home. Republicans understand this, and they are now facing a choice: continue riding Trump's sinking ship and face electoral annihilation, or begin to resist him. These fractures represent the only real opportunity to stop this disaster, but we cannot rely on politicians alone. Finally, I want to speak to you honestly about why we have ended up in this absurd and dangerous place. How did we get here? I know the answer, and it is not easy to hear. We re-elected a demagogue, a defender of child abusers, and too many people believed the lies that China would pay the tariffs or that farmers would somehow be rescued. I am tired of being told that we are not allowed to say this out loud. Donald Trump can call Minnesota a shithole, call New York trash, call San Francisco hell. But we are apparently not allowed to say that a significant portion of the American electorate was misled, uninformed, or lacked basic political and geographic understanding. This is the peak of ignorance. Donald Trump likes Greenland because it looks big on a map, because he does not understand how maps work. That is the level of intellect currently shaping this country's foreign policy, and I am exhausted from pretending that this is normal. Until we are willing to admit that our education system and our media ecosystem have failed to equip people with the critical thinking skills needed to see through these scams, we will never fix the problem. We are living in a reality where truth is distorted, where patriotism is equated with blind obedience, and where the wealth of billionaires is valued more highly than the lives of working people. But we cannot give in to despair. Your anger is justified, and it must be turned into action. Do not let them silence you. Do not let them normalize invading allies or militarizing domestic law enforcement. We must keep exposing the truth. We must keep pointing out the absurdity of spending trillions of dollars on an island while people at home are going hungry. Ruben Gallego was right when he said there will be a tremendous amount to repair once power is reclaimed, from removing abusive ICE officials to rebuilding international alliances. But none of that will happen unless we hold the line right now. This is the moment to wake up. Do not just watch the news and shake your head. Talk to your family. Talk to your friends. Explain why the Greenland situation is not a joke, but a warning sign of a much deeper collapse. Support independent voices who are willing to tell the truth. And if you want to stand with us in this fight, as always, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and share this video. If you've stayed with me to the very end, drop a blue heart in the comments so we know you're still fighting. Never stop fighting. Never let them wear you down. I'll see you in the next video where we'll continue exposing what they want to keep hidden.